a long period of time. So we're talking about actors that don't necessarily have a long-term productive relationship and working together. So anything we do is going to have a long time horizon and involve a lot of trust building and capacity building. Just to mention one example, we're not just talking about public-private partnerships. This PPP can also involve private-private partnerships. It can involve communities reaching out to business partners. Or it can involve NGOs, such as in this particular case, the well-known private reserve in Costa Rica, and I'm a member of the NGO that owns this in Costa Rica, called the Monteverde Cloud Forest Reserve. Very, very well known. There are National Geographic schedules on it. It's specials on it. It's owned and managed by an NGO. It gets 100,000 visitors a year, has its own endowment, a robust business plan. But do they try to do everything? And they're an NGO, a very successful NGO that's 50 years old this year. No. They realize their own limitations as an NGO. So they partner with a local restaurant, a very good restaurant, to run their own restaurant. They don't try to do it themselves. They don't try as well to run the guide service. They have a partnership with a local guide cooperative, very highly trained, multilingual guides, excellent national historians who run the guide business. So even if we're talking about this increasing number of NGO managed and owned protected areas, or even if it's a private landowner that runs a private reserve, this doesn't mean that they shouldn't also be thinking about partnerships with outside business partners who have this business skill to actually run tourism enterprises. So they basically outsource the guiding to a private guide cooperative, all local guides, of course. And they also use gift shops to generate much of their revenue, another one of the types of concessions that's becoming more common. And that very successful reserve, even though it gets a lot of visitation, the second most important source of funding is actually the gift shop sales. And the NGO that runs this particular private reserve has gotten so good at running a gift shop that it now has concessions in government-owned national parks in the rest of the country to run the gift shops. So these are the types of innovative partnerships that you're beginning to see more that are generating revenue for protected areas, involving local peoples, involving NGOs, businesses, and governments. So one of the things that was begun after the last World Park Congress was a collaborative effort on the part of a number of universities and this working group of WCPA to look at protected areas around the world, to look at best practice in concessions. There is now a draft good practice, a series document ready for publication by a member of this group as a result of this. And so just very quickly to go through some of the types of issues that we're looking at when you're trying to come up with concessions policy, either at a system level or an individual protected area. Just a very quick look at some of the types of issues that you have to deal with. So under these major headings then, by looking at concessions from around the world, through a number of workshops and a collection of literature, we've tried to look at, through this working group, what are the qualifications and types of institutions that need to be involved, what are the legal aspects surrounding these types of concessions. If you're talking about hotels, for example, many times we're talking about 40 to 60-year agreements. So you'd better know who your partner is, and you better have a good working set of laws and policies in place if you're going to create agreements for that long a period of time. So the financial legal aspects are important to think of, the environmental aspects, and the social aspects. Once again, that triple bottom line of the social aspects, the environmental aspects, and obviously these enterprises are not going to be sustainable if they do not turn a profit as well. So some key lessons that we've learned today are that these types of partnerships, such as those which South African National Parks uses through running gift shops and hotels in many of its protected areas, can encourage capital investment in protected areas, they can improve visitor services, and they can generate increased revenue flows. They can expand tourism business opportunities for both national and international tourism. And this can lead to greater public and decision maker support for conservation. Because once again, people and decision makers do not support what they do not know personally or understand. Another thing is that we now learned that concessionaires can partner with local communities, not just see them as sources of menial labor and of low-wage employment, but actually incorporate the local communities as shareholders in joint ventures where the community, over a period of time, actually becomes the majority owner and takes over as the concessionaire takes a secondary role. And what is very clear is that protected areas that have greater public use, and expanded stakeholder bases, including entrepreneurs and communities and visitors, tend to resist threats better than areas that are distant in mind and little known by the local or international population. So how do we get protected areas on the mental map? By improving the visitor services, by improving visitor infrastructure, and many times this requires partnerships. So we've achieved a lot since we last discussed this topic in Barcelona 4 years ago. There's been a global review of concessions published by Miriam Wyman, who's now at Auburn University in Alabama, and a series of colleagues. There's been a bibliography produced with all the documents in PDF that's available on Nature Conservancy's Conserve Online site. A global workshop was held 2 years ago in California, supported by the U.S. National Park Service and Colorado State University to share best practices, and this also had the support of this working group and the active involvement and of UNESCO's World Heritage Program. Very recently in March, there was a regional workshop on this topic held in Maputo, Mozambique, supported by USAID, another new partner in this initiative. In Brazil, which is dramatically expanding its both local and international visitation to its park system, there have been workshops on the topic over the last 2 years in Sao Paulo and in Curitiba in the south of Brazil. And a number of countries, as a result of this enthusiasm of effort, are updating their laws and their policies and are opening up to new tenders to increasingly promote this type of partnership in their protected areas. And just 3 examples there from Latin America of countries that are reforming concessions policies, that are opening up new tenders or bids, and that are trying to promote increasingly these types of partnerships that I've mentioned. So looking forward and closing now, what does this working group hope to achieve over the next couple of years? And my colleagues are going to talk now more about the upcoming revision of the overall tourism and protected area guidelines, and hopefully that will have some coverage of this topic. A specific best practices manual on public-private partnerships in protected areas will hopefully be published as well as part of the best practice series of WCPA. It's hoped that this series of organizations will continue to partner to do more regional, both training workshops and best practices workshops to review what's going on. And the hope is to have sessions like this at a number of upcoming global conservation meetings, such as the World Wilderness Congress in Spain a year from now, the World Parks Congress in Australia 2 years from now, and the many national and regional protected areas conferences that are going on. I understand there's going to be a regional one in Asia next year, as an example. So we hope to achieve more over the next 4 years to get over these traditional barriers and lack of trust among these actors, to demonstrate that collaborative efforts between NGOs, governments, and communities can improve protected area and tourism programs in protected areas, generate more dollars for conservation, generate more livelihood opportunities for local communities, and at the same time improve national economies as well by increasing the role of tourism based on natural areas in national economies. So that's where we hope to go over the next 4 years. In Europe, a group called Pan Parks is promoting this type of partnerships in many of the member parks in Western and Central Europe, supported by the Pan Parks Initiative. A number of organizations such as the U.S. Park Service or U.S. Forest Service are regularly sending personnel abroad to share lessons learned over a century of working with concessions with other countries that are helping out. And increasingly it's important that these cooperation missions not just be north-south, but they be south-south. They be between developing countries that are more advanced in this and other countries that are just starting out. There is a hope to incorporate more materials on this and online training modules as part of the CPD series, for example. And there's a great need for those of you that come from NGOs and the donor communities to implement pilot projects, trying to share these lessons, trying to demonstrate how these models can work in different settings. There's hope to use World Heritage Sites as good examples, since World Heritage Sites are supposed to be the pinnacle of importance in the global community of protected areas, to use World Heritage Sites as basically flagships for demonstrating best practice in this area. And we hope to continue to produce and disseminate a number of case studies on types of public-private partnerships for tourism management in a number of settings and types of protected areas around the world. And the hope is that it continues to be a key area of activity for our group of 200-some professionals that hopefully will be a little bit bigger after this session when some more of you join us. So thank you very much for all of this.
Thanks very much, Gina. It was a great session someone who's got a breadth of experience from many aspects as a researcher, as a part of a large international NGO, as somebody who's involved in community-based work on the ground. So Jim brings a lot of experience to and passion to this topic. We've got time for just maybe one or two quick questions if anybody would like to, if you go to the microphone.
Hi Jim, great overview. I agree completely with what you were saying. One thing that didn't come out in your presentation, and one thing I don't think we pay enough attention to, is the benefits to conservation from these kind of relationships. So I wonder if you could say a little bit about that, and that's maybe something the working group could also pay more attention to.
All right, thank you. Phil, correct?
Yeah.
My eyes are failing me now. It's Phil, right? Yeah, thank you. I know a number of situations where protected areas that have robust public use programs, you talk to their staff, and they say, we do not have the problems with poaching, with encroachment of other areas that are off the tourism map. Because if you suddenly create a number of business opportunities for local communities, for sales of artisanry, as rangers, as trail builders and maintainers, in the lodging and service industry, and there's this flow of benefits to the community, over a period of time, entire communities change. Many times I've seen this. I've experienced this in Costa Rica, where I lived for 20 years, a country that went from having an agriculture-based economy to an ecotourism-based economy, and how the livelihoods in the buffer zones have increased dramatically. And a lot of naysayers have tried to say, no, that things are going bad in the buffer zones. At this place in Monteverde, there is zero unemployment. They have to import labor because the economy is so robust. You will not find better examples of rural development and diverse economies. They haven't abandoned agriculture. They've created new markets for agriculture, new markets for traditional skills. They've revived things like dances and artisanry that were going out. So I think that there are a number of examples where creating robust tourism-based economies, and that doesn't mean abandoning agriculture, abandoning pastoralism, abandoning fishing, but diversifying economies, including tourism, has created great value added for conservation by winning a lot of hearts and minds by incorporating many more jobs and employment opportunities for people around parks.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you all.
The next speaker is Dr. Yufei Leung, and Yufei is going to now take you through the process for the review of the best practice guidelines. Now, this case study that Jim's just taken you through with public-private partnerships is just one of many topics that are important in relation to the best practice guidelines. And of course, that question was a very important one. Everybody wants to know, well, if you're going to be having these sorts of partnerships, or if you're going to be encouraging visitation, I must say I'm a bit of a fan of visitation rather than tourism as the label. I think tourism is a fairly loaded term. Visitors, and Jim said in his opening remarks, people protect what they love. You need people to visit protected areas if they're going to love them and going to want to see governments and other people care for them. So what we want to do is have a brief presentation and then ask you for inputs in terms of what you think is going to be important to us to make sure that this best practice guideline is in fact a useful document.
Thank you. So do I probably should stay here, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks Jim and Robin for the introduction and the excellent example of PPP, public-private partnership. So I'm trying to be brief here, just to I'd like to provide an overview of the process or objectives of the revision of these best practice guidelines for sustainable tourism in protected areas, and we are working as a team to have to oversee the whole process, and I'm going to go over that in a moment. And also, as you can, you saw that we came from 4 different countries, and I'm from the US, but also I was originally from Hong Kong, China, so from Asia, have some kind of Asia connection. So briefly about it, I should not move. The outline, I think Robin already covered the needs for the sustainable, the best practice guideline for this topic. And I'm going to briefly describe the previous 2 editions of these guidelines. And so the first one was published in 1992 and was revised in 2002. And so this is about, we think this is about the right time to create the updated edition of this book. A little bit about the 3rd edition, and then the main purpose of this workshop is to have you to get you involved in the discussion of what the new guideline or the new edition should look like, and the topics to emphasize, de-emphasize, and things are missing. Or so we're going to have a handout for you to show that the current version of the table of contents or the chapter outlines. So you can actually talk about the details, and that would hopefully facilitate our discussion. Again, I don't think I need to talk too much about this, and we all know that tourism is an important driver in a lot of protected area establishment, and also the special destination like World Heritage and geoparks that have a more recent system globally. I think Jim and Robin already covered that. Particularly Jim covered the political and public support of the areas is critical, and tourism is an important means to gain public and political support. We mentioned about this ecosystem service, and tourism is managed appropriately and sustainably, and that we should expect and see a variety of benefits to conservation and to the local communities. Sometimes we see that, sometimes we don't. So hopefully our effort is to hopefully we can increase the good examples, and hopefully we reduce the amount of bad examples or not so good examples. And also I want to mention that the visitor experience and conservation education opportunities are afforded by protected areas. That it's important that having an important high quality experience by the tourists would facilitate their revisit or their return to the areas, also for their support for protected area conservation. So that's an important kind of human experience that is connected to protected area. So if we accept or consider tourism as an appropriate ecosystem product or service, then the quality of that product should be evaluated, should be ensured. So there are, I think Robin and Jim also mentioned about some of the problems related to tourism in protected areas. I'm trying to avoid using the term sustainable tourism until we get to the guidelines. So tourism has created a lot of issues and threats to ecosystems. That these are just some of the examples that we have seen or we have observed. So I'm sure you have some kind of examples that you can share with us. So there's an important a great need for a set of guidelines that can be shared and can be used and utilized by protected area managers or as well as by other stakeholders of the tourism in protected areas. And so our goal is to make sure to enhance the positive role of tourism in protected areas, and we hopefully reduce the negative or not so positive role of tourism. So to support protected area objectives and conservation objectives. And we talk about again tourism protected area. We sometimes we use the term ecotourism, sometimes we use the term sustainable tourism or geotourism, and there are different terms. So we want to. These are a lot of debate among academics and also by different groups that we have different understanding of sustainable tourism or ecotourism. But it's important to see more tangible good practice and best practice in the field. That so that we can actually see the actual examples instead of just talking about debating about the concept of sustainable tourism. We want to see when we see that we know that this is a good example. May not be sustainable for eternity, but at least it's managed well and appropriately. I think these are good examples to be shared, should be shared by the global community. And also, so that leads to the next point that I was trying to mention, and again, the proactive and adaptive management in the face of all changes, global changes that we are experiencing right now. So again, there are two editions already have been published on this topic, and the first one was authored by Manelli. I think I don't know whether he's here, but he's at the Congress. And so that was the first edition of the guidelines. So the guideline was, I believe, it's about 60 pages long, with really concise summary of about planning, development, and management. A lot of bullet points that can go through the whole book. And in 2002, the second edition of this book was published authored by Eagles and his colleagues. And the volume or the size of the book has tripled to 180 some pages. So I don't expect the third edition to be triple of the size of that due to a lot of constraints. But we try to we do recognize that there are a lot of material to be synthesized and so to be included. So we'll really have to